Pleased to say performance is much improved this quarter, with 7 out of the 9 targeted indicators reported meeting or exceeding their targets and the performance for last quarter. Most notably, the number of households prevented from becoming homeless and the percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling, composting, which have also both exceeded their performance for the same quarter last year, which I think we'll all agree is a wonderful thing. The number of households housed through the Housing Register has just missed their target this quarter, and it should be noted, as is covered in the covering report, that there are fewer properties from registered providers available on the register, which accounts for this. The percentage of fly tips cleared or assessed within 2 working days was just shy of being within 10% of their target, but performance has improved in comparison to this quarter last year, and the reasons for missing the target are outlined in detail in the covering report, but key are a number of issues, which was staff sickness, issues with cleaning the high-speed roads, which is being looked at, and technical issues with software. I would like to close with some really positive performance, which I think is worth mentioning, that there's been extremely strong performance in the housing service in relation to the number of households in TA. And this might not be noted because it isn't targeted, but this has not only reduced since last quarter, but has also reduced since last year, which is a really positive thing, but wouldn't have been picked up previously because this is the first time that this performance indicator has been reported, and I thought it would be nice to bring that to everybody's attention. Happy to take any questions, and obviously officers are here to address anything in more technical detail.
Thank you, Anna. Councillor Ring.
Well, again, I think it's all positive. And also, because we didn't have ever read that figure before, that we're now getting people into homes as quick as we can. And I must say to John and the team that, you know, it took a while, but got there in the end. And let's just hope there's only 5 people knock next time and not 50 people wanting homes. Thank you.
Councillor Joy.
I'll just say ditto for this side as well. We agree with what's been said, and well done to officers. Good report. I like to see us moving up, so well done everyone.
Any other questions, members? No? Okay, members, we are only asked to note this report, so can I take it that it's duly noted by all members? Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna. Item 14 on the agenda, second quarter budget monitoring 2017-18. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report setting out the position as at the end of the second quarter against the budget, and also giving you updated projections to the end of the financial year. The position for this committee is that we're projecting an overspend at this stage of 140,000, which has come down from last quarter, but it is still an overspend. Details are set out on page 28 of the report, and you can see there's a number of variances, both favourable and adverse. As far as temporary accommodation is concerned, we've already touched on this. The budget for temporary accommodation was increased for this year, but we still have an overspend, which is now 72,000. But offsetting that is the fact that we've got an underspend of 61,000 on private sector accommodation, where we've not been able to spend the money that we'd set aside as incentives for people to go into private sector accommodation. And there's some other projected overspends at the top of the page arising from a delay in delivering savings on CCTV and from a number of issues in street cleansing, although again the overspend has come down from last quarter. So that's the revenue position, a projected overspend at this stage of 140,000, and obviously we do need to work hard to try and get that back into balance by the end of the year. first time this quarter, this report is also including details of capital spend within the remit of this committee, and details are on page 36. And the main item of capital spend for this committee this year has been housing investments. As I think all members know, we acquired 13 properties and possibly one more to come for temporary accommodation. So that's around 3 million of spend. So that's been the main item on the capital programme. You're asked to note the report, both the revenue and the capital figures, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on it.
Thank you, Mark. Questions, members? No? Okay. Recommendation is we are asked to note the report and also the position with the capital programme. Duly noted by everyone? Thank you. Item 15, review of parish service scheme. Mark.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. As members, I think, know, the parish services scheme was introduced back in 2012, and the idea of the scheme is that parishes should be funded to deliver services that are funded by the borough in non-parished areas. And it's now appropriate, after 5 years, to look at the operation of the parish services scheme. And what this report does is set out what we did to review it, the outcomes, and some recommendations arising from that. The review basically consisted of a survey of all the parishes, and we had responses from all but one of the parishes. And this allowed us to see what parishes actually did with the money that they get in the parish services scheme grant, and it also gave parishes the opportunity to input into the review with qualitative information. And what we found was that the parish services scheme grant in practice is topped up by the parishes. The parish services scheme grant, if you include public conveniences, is 130,000 for the current financial year, which is less than 10% of the total that parishes collect in precept. Again, for 17-18, they collect £1.7 million in a precept. And if you look at the individual headings that are covered by the parish services scheme, in particular grounds maintenance and play areas, you'll see that because they have additional money from the precept, they're able to top up what they get from the parish services scheme grant. So I think the conclusion is that the parish services scheme grant is helpful to parishes, but they do have other sources of funding that allow them to do other certainly very valuable things with their money. So what the report is proposing is that in the parish services scheme, we make a change to one of the underlying principles. The basic principle about supporting parishes with services that otherwise the borough would be funding is absolutely valid and remains, but it's proposed that we add in a principle that the provision of the parish services scheme grant is subject to the financial constraints faced by the borough, because we're constrained in what we can spend. We have limits to the amount by which we can put up council tax. So it seems right that the grant to the parishes is subject to the same constraints that the other expenditure of the borough is subject to. So at Appendix 3 to this report, you have an amended parish services scheme, and in the body of the report, in keeping with that principle that we look at ways that the spend on parishes can reflect the constraints we're under, we are proposing some minor rationalisation of the parish services scheme grant. We're proposing to remove a small size allowance of £350 that was paid to 16 out of the 35 parishes. And we also propose to stop paying an annual grant for notice boards to the parishes. The idea of this grant was that the parishes have to put up borough council notices on their notice boards, but actually the time that they will be spending money on notice boards is when they renew them, which might be only once every 5 years. So we'll set aside a pot of money that will that they can draw down on when they're renewing a notice board, but we won't be giving them money every year for their notice boards in the future. Now, the details of the grant for next year will be subject to discussion with the representatives of the parishes. We'll meet them in January as part of the budget process. So this report doesn't contain detailed recommendations about the grant for next year, but it does propose an updated set of principles that, as I say, are set out in Appendix 3. So you're asked to note the outcomes of the review, to agree the revised principles and the revised parish services scheme that's set out in Appendix 3. Happy to take any questions that you may have on that. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't at the last parish liaison meeting. I found myself out of the country and a few thousand miles away, so I couldn't exactly make it. But I have spoken with the CALC representatives. Now, I don't want to get into a long debate about the changes in the proposed parish services scheme. What I am concerned about is I think there's a lack of consultation here. I have spoken, but I was quite surprised when I read one or two of the things in here. When I spoke with the CALC representatives, they were a bit surprised as well, because under the parish charter, this seems to have been ignored, that there should be consultation, that both parties have agreed, and that there has been a lack of consultation here. I also haven't seen any notes of the minutes of the parish liaison meeting, actually, which does slightly worry me. So there are changes to the parish services scheme here. The ground maintenance has changed. Obviously, the notice board is another area. There were slightly alternative proposals to the play area grant put forward by the CALC reps, which hasn't been taken into account here. And there's no mention of the work that's done by the parish clerks. So what I would propose is that this is noted. I can note it, and there's no problem with that, but I would like to defer the rest until the CALC representatives have had a chance to see this and come back. So I think that's only fair. Otherwise, I think we're contravening the parish charter. That's a very basic point.
Do you want to come back on that, Mark?
We did discuss these proposals with representatives of the parishes at the meeting that you weren't able to attend, Councillor Perry. So they have been consulted. So far as the detail of the grant for next year is concerned, which is containing the things about the notice boards and so on, that will be discussed with the representatives of the parishes at the meeting in January. So they will have another bite of the cherry, as it were. All we're doing here is just making a change to the principles of the scheme, and that was explained very clearly to them in the meeting, and there was no objection raised to it.
Well, obviously there's a difference of opinion here, because I have spoken to two of the two reps concerned, and they don't accept that. So what I'll come back to my proposal. If you are speaking with them in January, at any rate, then I think that's the opportunity to give them a chance to come back on this, because clearly there's a difference of interpretation of what happened. Obviously, I can't speak what actually happened because I wasn't there, but I'm only taking the views of what I've been told by two people whose views I do trust. Thank you.
Did you want to come in on that, Matt?
Thank you, Chairman. I spoke to the officer who took the minutes for the meeting with the parish representatives, and she assures me that those will be available to be circulated before the end of the week.
Okay, John. Councillor Mortimer.
Thank you. Just on this point at the moment, I checked with a few people since the agenda came out, and it does say on page 39, but the clerks and chairs were involved over a certain period, and they were contacted directly reviewing the scheme. So, and I think that's where and I checked that with some people, and they were quite happy with it. And essentially, I mean, if the parishes are happy, and me sitting here, I'm happy if the parishes are happy, if you know what I'm saying. One of the problems I do have with it is that Count doesn't represent all parishes now, and some are falling away, and I don't think they're members. So I think that there is probably a bit of a sorting out needs to do about regarding representation, but that's fine. Also, the parishes, in my view, they will have to plan ahead now, because things are going to get worse. We all know that. And they're going to have to be looking at, if they've got development in their area, to have a neighbourhood plan, to be linking with SIL, because you can earn up to 25% in the SIL, and I think that's the way it's probably going to have to go. I can't see this parish services scheme being around much longer, although I'm an ex-parish councillor myself, and I was against moving the concurrent functions when it happened. But I think with the money that's so tight, I think that for parishes, they will have to look at, if they've got the development, look at SIL and look at what they're actually doing with their precepts. Some parishes, I'm aware, have put their precepts up quite high, and some haven't at all over recent years. And I think those are the ones at the bottom are actually going to get caught out once inflation starts to kick in. But I support the report. Thank you.
Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Berry?
I do, because the survey was on parish clerks, but it was not for the parish clerks to make that decision. And even if they did, and certainly my parish clerk, who I know very, very well, certainly didn't. So I don't buy that, with due respect. The other thing I would say is that CALC is important because it's part of the parish charter. It's in the parish charter, which all parties are signed to, and they do represent nearly all the parishes. The other point I would make is that I understand your point that you can raise money on the precept, but this is work that is done on behalf of NBC. That's what it's about. That's what the original concurrent functions was about. It's changed to the more specific parish services scheme. So if the parishes didn't feed the money ahead, there would be a pretty unfair situation, I think, quite frankly, and it probably just would not be right. So all I'm asking for is that for the parish, the quarterly parish liaison meeting, the CALC representatives who sit on that are just given a chance to come back on these particular proposals. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to request. I'm not saying I'm rejecting them or accepting them. All I'm saying is I think there should be a due consultation process. And I don't believe it's been fully. I understand there are different interpretations about this, and I don't want to get into a big debate about it, but my understanding is there are items on here that they have not accepted or have not been properly and fully discussed in line with the parish charter. And I think that is the important issue I would make. So all I'm asking is, and I would like to move, that we note this report and defer recommendations 2 and 3 until well, it'll have to be to January, I think, well, after the parish liaison meeting. Thank you.
Okay, before I carry on, is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Garton. You the next to talk, Councillor Garton.
Please, Mr. Chairman. This parish services scheme, and I totally agree with Councillor Perry on that one. We've got a bit of a communication problem here. I mean, I'm talking a few years back, even before I was councillor, my little parish of Stockbury wanted to take on some NBC services. They filed an information request with the Maidstone Borough Council, and they said, look, what does this service cost you, including administration cost, including cost for the Mrs. Broom's job, etc., rental of Maidstone House, pro rata. They were never given these figures. These figures could not be provided. So how can the parish make a business plan if half of the costing is actually missing? And eventually they just simply gave up on it. That was before I was elected, and one of the first things they said when I was elected, can you look into that, please? I haven't got any further with it, and to be quite honest, I didn't pursue it so far, but it underlines Councillor Perry's argument. of communication with the parishes. As far as this minute issue about notice boards is concerned, I think we should get away from the idea of the old glass box notice boards. Most parishes now operate websites or have parish magazines. And whether there's a notice board or not, the money is being used for communicating with the community in whichever guise. And I think we need to allow parishes to look a little bit more forward into the future.
Councillor Ring.
Well, there was one question that his brain box here thought of the same time, so I'm going to allow him to do that. The only other thing is, and no, never disrespect to the parishes, but I do wonder what it is they get for extra money that I don't. I'm just going to say Shetway North. I've lost 2 parks. Excuse me, gentlemen. I've lost 2 parks. I'm winded. I've lost 2 parks. I've got more dust than I've got actual grass. So I accept, and my residents accept to the best of their abilities, what it is Maidstone Borough Council decide at the end of the day. If there's no money, there's no money. So all I'm saying is, for one thing, it shouldn't have been flogged to the parishes if you didn't know what it would cost in the first place. And if part of this thing new is going to be you are now actually at the stage where you can say how much it costs, one man with a lawnmower on a field so many miles wide, then, yeah, maybe we do need to have a look at it. But I must admit, with my colleague, I understand how you feel, John, but I remember all the time I did it as cabinet member, and when we used to send things out for the parishes to liaise back on, there was always this argument, well, we don't want talking for us, and they don't seem to have the gut to do it between themselves. And on the second places, half of them never even answered. So it is very hard to get these replies.
Bear with me a minute.
Councillor Perry, I believe that your proposed motion was that the report was noted and that the other 2 matters were deferred, and that was seconded, and that therefore it might be sensible to vote on that proposal, because if it's carried, then further debate on the topic is unnecessary.
Okay, did members all hear that, yeah? Okay. Do you need it read out again, or do you know what you're voting on? Okay. All those in favour of the proposal? Against? Sorry, Richard, Councillor Webb, you can't vote on this because you weren't here for the... So I'll ask again, against? Abstentions? Okay. All right. Right. Thank you, Mark. Item 16, decommissioning part of the Public Realm CCTV service. Matt. Sorry, Matt. Sorry, I said Matt, sorry.
Sorry, I thought I'd wait just to see if there was any clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following the decision made by this committee in February, we actually did undertake the work to reduce the number of CCTV cameras that we have. We worked to the delegated authority given to explore the impact of reducing the hours of monitoring, and consulted with Kent Police and MaidSafe to establish their concerns. With regards to the decommissioning work, we now have undertaken that. We actually have now a total of 33 cameras still in operation. That's 38 static cameras that we retain a fibre connection for, and a number of others that use alternative transmission. The decommissioned cameras that now exist around the borough will need to be considered at some point. There are issues around leaving those in situ. The information actually is contained within the body of the report, so I won't go into too much detail on that. The monitoring hours being reduced to 84, we actually did do the consultation with MaidSafe and Kent Police. That's actually included under item 2. Rather than go through that in any detail, I think it's probably better to skip to the conclusion at item 2.5, which is that the reduction in monitoring hours is a cause for concern for key partners, although the specific concern about the impact on criminality was unable to be evidenced through statistical data. Both of the partners would prefer to see reduced monitoring service than no service at all, I think was the message to come back. We undertook negotiations with Medway Control Group, who are our current CCTV provider, to ascertain whether or not they could provide us with a reduced monitoring service. Medway Control Group were unable to provide a solution which would achieve the savings envisaged by the Council's medium-term financial strategy. MCG's position is that the local authority partnership that exists to provide the CCTV monitoring service is based on a shared management of resources and monitoring of CCTV on a 24-hour basis. Should one of the partners decide to withdraw or reduce their monitoring requirements from the partnership, it would potentially put the partnership's business model at risk. An alternative model was proposed by MCG that continues to provide 24-hour monitoring through a shared desk arrangement, which would result in a saving. However, it would not meet the saving target identified by the medium-term financial saving over the next 3 years. This leaves the committee with 3 options to decide upon this evening. Option 1 would be to retain the current 24-hour service. This option is not recommended as the proposal is not affordable. Option 2 would be to accept MCG's proposal for a merged desk as outlined in section 4. Again, this option is not recommended as the proposal would not achieve the required savings identified in the NTFS and requires some capital investment that would not be returned on an investor-saved basis over the period of a rolling contract. Option 3 is to re-tender for the CCTV service for a new 5-year term, setting out as required that the service be delivered within the agreed budget. The options are fairly self-explanatory. I think rather than go into detail, I'll quite happily take any questions from members.
Thank you, Matt. Questions, anyone? Councillor Burton.
Sorry, just on a sort of point of order, if you like, I think Councillor English had indicated he was going to speak on this.
Yeah. Would you like to come forward, please, Councillor English? You know the procedure, Clive, so...
Yes, apologies, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, as you say, visiting members do tend to go first. I'm here in my capacity as a member of the board of One Maidstone, representing Maidstone Borough Council, of course. We, as a partnership, also operate as a subsidiary company, MaidSafe, as I'm sure many of you will be aware. I've been asked to point out that first of all, that there's a factual misrepresentation. It's an error, but not a major one, but it is an error in the report, where it says, ideally, we would like the reduction to these hours. Actually, that's what we find just barely acceptable, not ideal. We didn't actually say that was ideal. What MaidSafe is saying is that we accept there is a need to save money, a drastic need to save money, but this is what we think is an acceptable-ish level of service, not that we think there is anything ideal about it. Question of emphasis, obviously. Now, given where we are, I don't think there's any alternative but to go with what, well, there is an alternative, but there isn't any really acceptable alternative except to re-tender and go with option 3. All I would say on that, on behalf of One Maidstone and MaidSafe, is that we accept where we are and we need to keep within the medium-term financial strategy, but is 33 fixed columns necessarily the only way to do that, or is it 30 columns and a mobile? It is a question of what is the best value for delivery of a particular system. So all I would say is, yes, we got the financial constraints, but it may be that when we're looking at lateral thinking and tenders, that we have to be open to what is the best model of delivery for that. That's not, and I would stress this is not my personal opinion. These are the views I've been asked to represent. Now, thank you very much for your time, members, and I hope that the recommendation would be approved.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Burton, first.
Thank you, Chairman, and may I say how nice it is to be able to speak again. I was really struggling earlier.
We did miss you.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Sorry, you've thrown me now. Okay, I am going to say something controversial and unpopular that's not on the papers in front of us here this evening, and it is something that I still struggle with the whole principle of us as a local authority footing the bill for CCTV. And then when you have, sorry, I can't find it now, 2.5, the reduction in monitored hours is a cause for concern for key partners who do not foot that bill. Yeah. You know, this is something that I really struggle with. I think I don't get any sense from my fellow members that there's appetite to really go on the attack and throw the cameras at Kent Police or whoever it may be and say, there you go, you take them. But I do think there's a serious principle issue here. And if we're being asked to make savings in our budget, we have to look to the services that we are actually, where the onus is on us to provide that service, and it's a service that we use. What we're doing at the moment is akin to, I don't know, a football club buying all the tennis rackets and owning all the tennis courts for the local tennis association and letting them out, but never being involved in playing tennis. You know, it's a really horrible analogy for it, but I really do struggle with this idea. So, you know, I think whereas Councillor English has put forward the suggestion that option 3 is a minimum, I would actually say option 3 should be a maximum position for this committee and this council to take.
Councillor Ring.
Well, in a moment, I'll definitely follow Matt, but I would also like to add in, I see an article the other morning when I was reading the newspaper. The police are billing the NHS for when they have to go and get mental health patients off the property. And I thought, I can't believe I'm reading this. Our people, and it's the same as I'm going to come up about MaidSafe, and I'm still swear that our council only deal about the town centre, and this is no disrespect to my fellow councillors at all. But we've got cameras in all wards. All wards. A borough, it's called. And so the reduction I don't have a problem with. But when I hear MaidSafe come in and say all this, they're taking money off of my news agents up my area. So will they be guaranteeing them a camera? So all I'm saying is, this is dodgy. We've got to be careful. We don't want criminals knowing what cameras are good and what cameras aren't. I read in the report, if we took them down, how much it's going to cost per column. Well, I don't care, leave them now. Because they'll never know, the criminal will never know whether that portable camera isn't going to be there. And item 3 is the one that I would go for. It leaves us open, we can sit down and draw our own plan, Maidstone Borough Council's plan, not the police, not MaidSafe, what we would like to see in the future. And then it comes back to the committee and we go, oh yeah, that's a brilliant way to go. And what we do is look at the bottom line of the price. Horses for courses. That's what I say.
Councillor Mortimer.
Councillor Burton said most of what I was going to say, basically. But, I mean, basically, if the police have any interest in CCTV, our system, they will be picking up the tab for some of it. And even if they said this year, oh, we'll give you 30% towards it or something like that, at least it would know that it's a help, that they're connected with us and there's a partnership going on. Because, and that's it. I mean, and I've bang on about this for ages, but I've said it time and time again that I do not understand how we have all this partnership working, and when it comes to actually delivering the goods and the cash, it doesn't happen. And I don't know anything about the police budgets, but I would imagine it is quite a small amount to support community safety at the end of the day. I can remember, I suppose some of you here can remember when we moved over to Medway and all the hoo-ha about losing control and things like that. And at the time, there were quite a number of things happening. We had a partnership there. They were selling over in Medway. They were trying to expand the system. And that hasn't happened, unfortunately, perhaps because of climate, etc. But I thought personally at the time, I thought it was a good opportunity. And we were actually sort of taking the lead on that, and because we had the contract on it and that. So, but, I mean, it does make me laugh as well when I read the report. And it's not the officers at all, but it's about 101 service and the MaidSafe. Now, I had a meeting with representatives in my ward week before last with a police and crime commissioner. And we were told that the 101 service, the average answering time is, I think it was, made a note here, 4 minutes. Yeah, 4 minutes. So, for over a 24-hour period. Now, my residents are ringing up, and it's taking them 20 minutes. I heard 50 minutes the other night. Put the phone down, try it again. So, I mean, I wonder. Thank you.
Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll ask a fairly direct and straightforward question because it might help clarify my understanding as to how we maybe could take some of these sentiments forward. Other than footing the bill, because we don't, as an authority, directly use the cameras for catching criminals, which is what they're there for, or as deterrence methods, what is our part in the partnership with our key stakeholders in these? Is it purely a historical arrangement because logistically we team up with other councils to foot the bill, or is there some kind of functional reason for us to have an involvement in CCTV?
Historically, yes, you're right. When one of the pieces of legislation about crime reduction and public disorder were brought in, this was very much seen as part of the way of delivering that. So there is an element that remains that is a function for us, and that is around antisocial behaviour. So, you know, those instances where things aren't exactly criminal, but they are still a disturbance or cause harassment to the local population. So there still is a role in that sense. And there are other things that colleagues would point to, including things around like searching for missing people and those sorts of things, where, you know, it can be an assistance in those sorts of things. So it is slightly broader than criminal, but again, it's a judgment call for you to make.
Okay, if I may just come back on that, those three things are, sorry, this is perhaps my quite basic understanding of the way the division of labour should work between us and the police, but antisocial behaviour, looking for missing people, and obviously then preventing crime and catching criminals, they all seem like things where we're footing the bill for the police to use the equipment that we're putting up for them. I think, you know, per the papers, option 3 is eminently sensible for a sort of knee-jerk decision here on the night. But within that retender process, I think we've got to keep a seriously open mind as a council to saying that here you go, Kent Police, we'll leave all the columns up for you. here's the hardware, now you can take it over. And if they don't want it, I'm sorry, but it's them letting down the people of this borough and not us, and we need to be front-footed in saying so. I'm not saying that's the decision we're going to take here tonight, because it's quite a big decision to make on a snap like that, and I think we'd maybe need a little bit more information and a bit of dialogue with them about the potential for that and the possible outcomes of it. But I think that's something we need to keep our minds open to in this retendering process.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm minded of one of our key policies, principles, I'm not quite sure what to call them, that we must have a clean and safe environment. Now, I know, in my own ward, and I think it's the same here in the town centre and all around the borough, particularly older people, I think this is a serious issue. They need to feel safe, and that security cameras are an important part of that. I've been involved with the funding of CCTV in my own ward, and we've actually paid for it ourselves, some of it. But it is a very, very important issue. And I actually think there are two distinct points here. One is the provision of CCTV itself. Do we need it? Do we want it? And two, who actually funds it and pays for it, which I think is possibly separate. Now, to be frank, honest about it, I've always been a supporter of CCTV. I do think it has a use. So, and I think it's part of that whole point about the Borough Council having a clean and safe environment, which on all surveys that have been undertaken is numero uno. It's the first thing people always say and support. And I think that's important. It's an important psychological point. And I know youngsters have mobile phones and they think they can record everything, but they're not always present when these things happen. So I'm still in favour of CCTV. Now, the question is who pays for it. Now, I think this is the big answer, and the one that certainly exercises my mind as well, because I think, if I'm right in saying, the police have been tried many, many times to cough up some money for this, and they always make excuses or don't seem to do it. But I am minded to support what Councillor Burton said, that we should still keep an open mind on getting this, because, and maybe it's through the police commissioner that we should perhaps go into persuasive mode, if I can use those terms, because I think we should still pursue this, because I think it's a fairness, consciousness issue, and I think it's very important. So I'll be brief. I will support the option 3 proposal, because I think personally, I think it'd be suicidal not to actually do respect, and I think the town's got a lot of problems, at any rate, and I think they've increased over the. Two colleagues of mine were subject to attempted mugging, one during broad daylight and one during the day. So, you know, that could have been picked up. So I think that is important. But I still think we should keep an open mind on the future funding. And if we can, and I think we should involve the police more. And maybe try the nuclear option. Look, you know, we're short of money, just as you are. And you know, we'll take them down if you're not going to use them, or pay for them, or make a contribution towards them. I don't see why we can't do that in any serious negotiations or with the police. But I will support option 3, but with that caveat that I think other members have mentioned. Thank you.
Councillor Garton.
Mr. Chairman, members, clean and safe environment. I'm not against CCTV, and we were talking about parish councils a moment ago. I'm now trialling in the North Downs a system where the parish councils buy very cheap cameras with movement detectors. Police has recommended them with a little SD card to combat the fly tipping. Maidstone Borough kindly supplies us with the warning signs, which we have to put up under the legal regulations. We have our first couple of successes already in the scheme, but it's not totally rolled out yet. And I won't say which parish councils are the first ones to roll this out. However, this is a very low-budget thing where we can achieve a clean and safe environment very effectively, I think, in the long term. We also discussed this evening about Heather House. We want to build a new community centre. We need to find the money for it. Here we want to save £150,000, possibly more. It's a lot of money which we can put to much better causes. CCTV in the 90s was the vogue of the day. It was the political thing. CCTV is the solution to everything. We put CCTV up, we take the police officer off the road. Then we put up the speed cameras and we take the traffic police officer off the road. But national statistic now shows us, in the years which have passed, that the deterrent effect of CCTV, if it ever was there, has very much waned down. The actual criminals are wearing hoodies, and the deterrent effect is certainly overestimated, and all criminologists will agree on that one. I agree with Councillor Burton when he says NBC should not provide a service for free to the police. Does the police want this service? I believe officers had preliminary talks with the police, and there was not very much interest to it. The next thing, the business community. All shops in the town centre have their own CCTV. Could we possibly help them by linking their CCTV together as a one-off payment? And the vogue has worn down, and due to the Conservative and Liberal coalition way back at 2010 to 2015, national data protection laws have been brought in, which have reduced Maidstone's cameras from 60-odd to 38 now. So I think we have to or 33 even. We have to think very, very carefully whether we pursue CCTV. There's new technologies out. Councillor Perry mentioned the mobile telephones, body cameras of the policemen, if they are on site, all these things. I think I'm missing tonight option 4, just simply to do away with the CCTV. But in lieu of option 4, I think I will go for option 3, provided we will have a final say about it before we accept any tender.
If I may, with the proposer's acceptance, I'd like to move an amendment to option 3 to be able to encompass that, which is I think to tag on to the end of it, that when the preferred options from the tender are reported back to this committee, that report also includes a thought-out option 4, as Patrick puts it, the nuclear option to do away with CCTV, and that in line with the tendering process, Kent Police and other partners in that are put on notice that this is something we're seriously looking at. I think we need to have all of those options on the table when we get to the end of the tender process.
Matt, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. Trying to think of a way of phrasing this without complicating the debate so far. I think members have to decide on one of the 3 options at the moment. However, I would just like to highlight that this committee does act as the overview and scrutiny committee for the Community Safety Partnership. And members do have an opportunity to draw down CCTV as a scrutiny item. As an aside to the decision that needs to be making tonight, to look at the partnership engagement of CCTV, to look at the technology involved and the costs of running the service, and explore what that really means in detail, which could be done alongside the tendering process. The tendering process, if it's agreed tonight, will still need to take place, but that overview and scrutiny function does provide members with an opportunity to maybe get under the hood of CCTV in a way that perhaps would be advantageous.
If I can come back on that quickly, Chairman, I totally agree. If that's the better way, perhaps I'm just not explaining the process properly when I'm saying it. And I'd also like to make very clear that I'm not anti-CCTV in anything that I'm saying, but I feel that it needs to be charged to the right place and the people who use it. And as I said earlier, if at that point, if we were to explore that option, if at that point there were to be no CCTV in the future, it'd be the police failing the residents and not us as a council.
I've got Councillor Perry next.
I'll be very, very brief. I was browsing through the Borough's Excellent Insight magazine, and on page 17 there's a lovely little promotion for CCTV. So I thought I'd just leave that with members.
Okay, I have Councillor Ring.
Just very quickly, I don't think any one of us would like to leave our residents to any sort of fate. And I think history is, in all the time in the council, this part of the history of the council has been the hardest one to swallow, because I acted like my colleagues here at the beginning when I first became a councillor. I couldn't understand why someone did something for nothing. Wasn't quite sure. But I do realise it was politics at the time, and over the years no one's ever dealt with it. If we want to be business-like, which we're trying to point our council to save our ratepayers, because it's them I feel sorry for, and I know that's us as well, but all I'm saying is they keep seeing it go up and up and up. We're keeping ours at a balance, and the police and the fire brigade, etc., are putting theirs up and being allowed to get away with it. So there's the sort of things that I don't understand. And sometimes we can have so many partnerships, we're still the ones being left out. So it's up to our officers to make us more business-like as well. So who we sit with, where we're going to go and what we're going to do. So I would like to go to what Matt said. I don't want to keep adding things on because we're getting out of what it's all about. I truly do think that whether we keep CCTV or not is not to do with this contract. Because we're in a bit of a stuck, aren't we? It's next year, isn't it? This one's up, so time's run.
It's run out already.
You know, things are running out. So what I'm saying is I don't think this is a time to add the two together. I think that will be a political thing in the near future where we can actually say, this is what it's costing you. That's my opinion anyway. So.
Okay, last one, Councillor Garden.
Could any of the Mr. Connell or Mr. Green enlighten us what is actually the cost of the tendering process?
Can you repeat, sorry?
The officer's time, etc., the advertising, any administration which is involved with the tendering process. What is the cost of that?
Thank you. It's fairly minimal because we have a procurement team in-house, so it's what we're working towards doing is procuring the contract, and then we can make the decision. So, having come this far, I wouldn't suggest we do anything else now. So, I would.
Okay. So we have. Sorry, let's look at the proposals we've got.
Chairman, if it's not already happened, I'd like to propose option 3. I'm not sure whether we've had a proposer seconder.
No, I'm just getting to the options. Okay, we have a proposal that option 3 be put forward. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Ring. Proposed by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Ring.
Chairman, can you just clarify, was that just option 3 or with your... Just option 3?
Okay, all clear on that? Yeah, okay, all those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Right, we now have exempt item, so any members of the public, I'm afraid I would have to ask to leave. I don't know that young man is there, is it?
Councillor Garton's boy.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
This is another peculiar one I don't understand. Oh,